Someone's race or ethnicity is usually a central marker to how somebody identifies, and I always felt like mine was just a big smudge that I could never decipher. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to it if this is your first time here. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jacy, and on this channel, I like to do some story times. I have a couple different series going on. I have my story times, I have snippets, sometimes I'll do some self-roasts, and then I also have what I'm calling my chit chats, where it's not so much a story, like a cohesive single telling of an event, but more so chit-chatting or maybe ranting with you guys about certain aspects of my life or things that have happened. So this will be kind of my second chit-chat. I would consider the video I did about why I quit social media and how I have since returned kind of another chit-chat video, but just kind of trying something new. But this is a this is a video that I have been putting on the back burner for a really long time, and it is about my experience growing up as a mixed kid, being half black and half white. The reason it took me so long is because I think I wanted to collect my thoughts thoroughly and not say the wrong thing. And the more I was kind of like taking notes and scripting out what I wanted to say, the more I realized it's my experience and it's my own personal story. So it's not so much I could say the wrong thing, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm articulating all the points that I wanted to say. So sorry if you've been waiting for this video, but I'm really happy that I was finally able to get this video together. Now I would like to apologize in advance for how dumb the lighting's gonna be. So maybe listen to this one as like a podcast. But you know what, let's just hop right into the video. This will be the story of me growing up as a mixed kid in America. So firstly, I want to talk about my experience growing up mixed. My siblings and I have always been very white passing. We all had blonde curly hair, olive skin, and I specifically had light colored eyes. So very white passing, but also air quote, exotic. I remember going to the fair as young tots, and people would stop and take our photo or like ask us if we wanted to get into modeling, which is super odd in hindsight, like approaching strangers and calling your kids attractive. That's kind of weird. But I can definitely remember from a very young age that the reason we would get looked at and praised was because we were mixed. We were this beautiful blend and we were different. The point is, I just always remember from a very young age just always being called mixed, because my whole life I've always been asked, what am I? I'm not white enough to be just white, so since the day I was born, I've always had to explain myself, if you will. So people would ask what we are, and my mom would always answer, they're mixed, half black, half white. And that's always how I saw myself. I know some people prefer the term biracial, others multi-ethnic. I know I prefer the term black, other people African American. But from a very early age and kind of for forever, I will always personally refer to myself as mixed, half black, and half white. As a kid in elementary school, you aren't really aware of ethnicities or religions in the scope of society. So we didn't really have opinions or judgments based on those. I mean, I think if I'm being honest, I was probably more concerned of whether I could trade my fruit roll-up for a Nutter Butter rather than like what skin color Jeremy was. So I don't remember anything really related to my ethnicity until probably about my preteens. That was mostly because I lived in a middle-class suburban neighborhood where there was a decent enough amount of diversity to, I guess, not notice if somebody looked different than myself. Then when I got into middle school, I didn't experience aggressive racism by any means, more like bad preteen jokes. And mine revolved around the fact that I am half black and my last name was white. So for some reason, Jacy half white was the best joke my peers could come up with. Real original. But this was also the time where we were more aware of, I guess, stereotypes, where if I made the school basketball team, friends would say that they only took me because I was part black, you know? It was also just stupid jokes like liking watermelon or drinking grape Kool-Aid, like just stupid stereotypes that didn't necessarily hurt my feelings nor make me reflect at all on my own ethnicity. And if I'm being honest, I kind of loved telling people that I'm half black, partly because I kind of considered it my party trick. So keep in mind, my whole life, I straightened my blonde hair. I didn't embrace my curls until way later in life. So, I mean, look at me without the hair. I don't look black. And that's kind of how it was growing up. So, I'd go to a birthday party and friends would make like a stupid fried chicken joke and they'd turn to their new friend and say, "Oh, you didn't know? She's half black." And we'd all revel in how wild that was. So I would kind of even throw myself into these stereotypes like, "Oh, I'd be the first person to die in a scary movie. Oh, it's because I'm black. You didn't know?" Pretty crazy, right? I definitely considered it like my defining and differentiating feature. So I wasn't hurt at all by the jokes, and I kind of embraced it again as like a stupid little party trick almost. It wasn't until high school that I realized the judgments being placed on me for identifying this way. So things went from stupid jokes to actually questioning everything I did or said. I had a whole new school of people to test out my party trick on, and instead of a lighthearted response, it was an incredulous, "Oh, you're black, but you don't act black," or "You don't talk black." And for the first time, I was like, what the hell does that mean? So now all these stereotypes we joked about were actually getting imposed on me, and I was being scrutinized for, I guess, not fulfilling them. I mean, what does it even mean to talk black? How does one act black? People were now responding in a way that showed they didn't believe, not because of how light my skin was, but instead predetermined characteristics and actions I should be having. I kid you not, one time I told somebody that I was half black and they literally responded, "But you're smart." What the actual fuck? Like, I started noticing these inherent racial thoughts and biases from others that were starting to get hurtful. But it wasn't just from non-black people, because it'd be from black friends as well. I specifically remember telling a friend, like, "Oh, I'm black, right?" And she said, "Nah, you don't act black, so you don't count." And that always stuck with me. You don't count. It was as if I wasn't black enough to fit everyone's concept, so I wasn't allowed to identify that way. So, cue the identity crisis. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't have a full-blown, moment standing in the rain shouting, "Who am I?" No, nothing that dramatic, but I could definitely say I subconsciously tried to hide my ethnicity in high school so as not to be questioned about it. I guess in essence, I moderated my blackness. I guess what I started doing was adapting based on the social group with which I was interacting. So, the more black people in the group, the louder I would speak, or the more slang I would incorporate. I would mimic their energy and mannerisms, so I wouldn't be called out as the white girl of the group. But if it was a group of more non-black friends, the calmer I would appear, and the more I felt I needed to articulate, just so that I wouldn't be labeled as the crazy black friend, And I would literally change my personality based on these stupid predetermined stereotypes and what I thought people wanted from me just to fit in these stupid cliques in high school. And I can say it was definitely tough figuring out where I belonged at first, because I wasn't really enough, or I didn't count for certain groups. I didn't really know who I was because of that, but I knew the real Jacy was somewhere in the middle. So once high school got going, I did learn to be unapologetically me. I did find my group of lifelong friends of varying backgrounds where I didn't feel like I needed to act a certain way to fit in. Sure, I became the butt of bad black jokes every now and then, but not in a way that was hurtful or ostracizing. But then college came around, and that identity crisis kept inching its way back into the crevices of my brain. I remember I started applying for colleges, and almost every application we had to check a box for Hispanic, Asian, Caucasian, or Black, and I could only pick one. And in doing so, I felt like I was essentially choosing a parent over the other. And my instructors would always tell me to always mark Black because it would increase the diversity index of a college. And I remember thinking how absolutely ridiculous that was. I mean, it was so messed up that I felt like I had a better chance of getting into a prestigious college simply because of my genes. It was like they were saying, all white people go to college, but black people don't, so they'll think you're rare. And I think the most hurtful thing my teachers would say would be telling me to check that black box and then joking, but it'll be funny when you actually show up and they see you. They'll think you lied. And so I always felt like this imposter. Again, I wasn't allowed to check that box because I didn't look or act a certain way. Because again, I shouldn't count. And even worse, it felt like I shouldn't count because I benefited too much from white privilege to reap the benefits of even checking that box. It felt like if I checked that box, I'd be taking a college spot away from a real Black individual who faced real racism and true systematic oppression, and that I was a fraud. It was an odd feeling, but I checked that box because to me, being Black is simply what I am, not who I am. But it made me question my worth once I started getting into colleges. Did I get accepted because of my grades and my extracurriculars, or because I'm Black and rare? Did they like how much I volunteered while working a part-time job? Or did they just take me to show how inclusive and welcoming and diverse their campus was to underserved communities? And I think one of the most polarizing experiences of my life was actually the summer before college. So I applied for a local scholarship for young African American scholars. I wrote a kick-ass essay. I made it to the interview round, and I remember sitting in a room with two incredible women, and I shared with them kind of exactly what I'm sharing with you so far, that I've struggled with my identity, and I still struggle, but I won't let predetermined expectations based on my ethnicity become an obstacle in my academic journey. I crushed that interview and I made it to the awards luncheon. So it was this big dinner. I took my dad as a date. I met some incredible women as we networked, laughed, and quickly became friends within the short span of an hour. So after lunch, they would go on to announce the winners of the scholarship. A girl at my table won third prize, and we all stood up and shouted our praises because we had just met her and become friends. Second place then got announced, and then the grand prize scholarship for the African American scholars was announced. And they called my name. Now, I don't know if this happened actually, like my brain is telling me that it happened, but here's what I remember. I remember nobody clapping, nobody cheering. I walked to the front of the stage and it felt like people were gasping in disgust. I went back to my table and the girls gave me some quiet wishes of congratulations, but they stopped talking to me all throughout dessert. I felt like an imposter, like a colonizer who had come in and taken their spoils. And honestly, if my own Black father weren't sitting there next to me, I think there probably would have been audible pleas of oppositions, because how could this white girl win this scholarship for Black girls? It was again that feeling that I did everything right. I followed the rules, I won the grand prize fair and square, which I was super grateful for, but socially I was still not accepted and I still didn't fit in. And what my teacher said basically came true. That if I checked that box, people were gonna think I lied in order to reap the benefits, and that I was taking it away from somebody who had actually experienced what it truly means to be a Black individual. So in college, my identity crisis kind of went back to being a non-issue because college is very woke and inclusive, and people would kind of tiptoe around talks of ethnicity in favor of being politically correct. So I didn't feel the need to explain myself or act a certain way. In fact, I kind of remember the tide shifting a bit. I remember in my freshman dorm building, the floor below us was called Somerset, and it was the all-Black student floor that you had to apply and opt into. In my dorm, I was in a suite of 8 girls, and 5 of us were Black, including myself. I remember one of my friends saying that we were the rejects of the Somerset floor and that we were Somerset 2.0. And it's so silly, but it was the first time in my life where I was actually being counted as one of the Black kids by the Black kids. I was also invited to join the Black Student Assembly, no questions asked. And for the first time ever, I didn't feel like being intelligent, being articulate, or being calm was being non-Black. And then, of course, you get reminded by weird little inherent things people would say or do. And one example would be one time I was in college. I remember telling somebody I was half Black and they said, "Oof, I didn't know that. I'll have to watch my jokes around you. Ha ha ha." Thanks, but also sounds like you're making racist comments around people who you think are safe to say them to, so that's not good. It also felt like they were saying that now they couldn't be racist around me, that I was eliminated as a potential friend for them. But I mean, on the other side, I had another classmate who was Black who found out I was mixed and asked to interview me for one of her papers, kind of similar to the topic of this whole video. So we met for an interview, we had lunch, and we became pretty good friends after that. I mean, to this day, we're still commenting on each other's social media. But I always wonder, did we only become friends because she found out that I had some Black in me and thus I passed some sort of test? So little things like that I noticed, but I think for the most part, college was a time where my identity crisis was kind of dormant again, and I didn't feel like I didn't belong there. However, a huge reason for this was because I didn't really have a wonderful college experience anyway. I went home every single weekend. I didn't participate in any extracurriculars or clubs or parties, and I didn't make a lot of friends in general. That's like a whole other video topic that I might do someday. So let me know if you might be interested in that. So that kind of had a lot to do with, feeling like I wasn't being excluded, but it was because I was mostly just not including myself anyway. Anyway, moving on, let's move forward a few years and talk about my experience being half Black later in life in my late 20s, including how I've benefited from it and how I had a total meltdown from the George Floyd riots and the Black Lives Matter movement. But before we get into that, I just noticed that you aren't subscribed. What's up with that? I love to do story times on this channel. I love to do chit chats like this, maybe a little bit of rants here and there. If you like that kind of content, if you're enjoying this video so far, or if you like hanging out with me, then give this video a like and hit that subscribe button so you can join us for future commentary, future story times, and just hanging out with me. So just wanted to sprinkle that little nugget in here. But let's move on. So let's talk Black Lives Matter and how that was the next chronological disaster in my identity crisis. So when the renewed energy towards the BLM movement, that's redundant. When the renewed energy towards BLM and the subsequent protest happened, I had just moved to Los Angeles. There were riots, there were protests, there was an unprecedented global pandemic, and there was literally a video of a Black man getting murdered by a cop. So here I was living alone for the first time in my life, and with everything going on in the world, I fell into this really, really dark place for several weeks. I have never in my life experienced depression the way that I did that week, mostly because this time it was different than other times. It wasn't just general sadness and feeling numb to how crazy the world was. It was guilt. I felt like I wanted to get out there on the front lines of the protests, scream in a cop's face and fight this fight and be really passionate and really energetic for my fellow Black community. But I couldn't move. And for a week, I just sat on the couch like unmoving, trying to figure out why my brain was calling me a hypocrite and, shaming me for not being a part of the change. And I told myself I was so upset because I'm Black and this is my community. But something felt off. It wasn't until I saw a tweet from Halsey that I kind of found this clarity. So Halsey, if you didn't know, is half Black and half white, just like me. She's actually my go-to celebrity when I tell people that I say I don't look Black. I say I'm just the same amount as Halsey, and then they kind of start to believe me and go, oh, that makes sense. But anyway, during this time, she was actually getting accused that she was rejecting her Black side and only identifying as white. She tweeted that while she identifies as Black, she is white passing and thus benefits from white privilege. So it wasn't fair for her to start shouting from the rooftops her Blackness when the point of this movement is about the injustices Black individuals face based on the color of their skin. And so after reading her simple tweet, it kind of all made sense. It all made sense to me why I was feeling guilty. So yes, I am Black, I am proud, but I am also completely white passing. I will never get pulled over by a police officer and fear for my life. I will never be discriminated against in a job interview based on my appearance. I will never face the same social injustices as others with a darker complexion. And so I kind of too realized that while I am Black, I will never have experiences comparable to others. So I had to fight this fight almost as an ally and fight for my aunts, my uncles, cousins, and friends who lived in a different America than I personally lived in because I am white passing. So it was a completely renewed identity crisis where for the first time ever, it was like I had to acknowledge that perhaps I really didn't count, that that's what's best for my Black community. I had friends texting me, asking me to educate them on being Black in America, which is absolutely incredible. Because people were finally doing their part. People were finally becoming actively anti-racist and finally seeking some type of understanding. And I had to tell them that I didn't count. that they shouldn't be asking me about my experiences as a Black woman in America because it was simply not the same as other Black women in America. So it's been a year since that meltdown, and my views have probably changed again. And that's probably truly representative of what it's like being a mixed kid in today's society. But now I do think that it's important to share my experiences as a half Black woman because it still sheds some light on society. Like all of the times my father has been questioned having white passing daughters. And I actually even joked about it in a recent video where we had a situation in the hospital, but it's something that happens all of the time. And I talk about how people would say racist things around me, thinking it was safe and not realizing I was Black. So knowing the true insidiousness of how people can be when they think it's a safe space has kind of been eye-opening and thinking people think that's okay. I talk about how the Black community has absolutely condemned my own mother as a racist because she used to straighten my hair growing up and didn't seek proper education on how to do her kids' hair. So it's kind of like I've seen the good and the bad from both sides of my ethnicity. And I think where my identity lies now is it's still somewhere in between. I am Black. My heritage, my culture, my ancestry, my community, my family, we and I are Black. But when it comes to social constructs and dismantling systematic oppression, I cannot in good conscience claim to be as impacted by it, and therefore I am white. So I'm truly a mixed kid, and it's something I suppose I struggle with all the time, but at least now as like a 28-year-old, I can understand and recognize my privileges while still embracing my identity. And it's not a very debilitating identity crisis anymore. It's just, you know, those thoughts that pop up that I want to make sure I'm educating others. So that was a chronological telling of my identity crisis as growing up half Black. I actually started scripting out some of my experiences benefiting from being mixed. So this would probably include like a deep dive into the fetishization of mixed babies in today's culture and how my pretty privilege and being mixed is not only based on my proximity to whiteness, but how it's helping me kind of dabble into the entertainment industry because I am truly getting booked based on my ethnic ambiguity, and it's starting to make me feel that my own ethnicity is a trend. So I started scripting that out, but then even Microsoft Word was like, I'm running out of ink. This is becoming a dissertation. And it would have just been way too long of a video. But if you would like to hear some more of those experiences and those stories and kind of like a deep dive on some of the benefits as well as the weirdness of that, of me being mixed, definitely let me know below because that would be another video I would love to do for you guys. But I thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you'll join me for future story times and chit chats like this one. And I'll see you in the next video. Toodles! I think one of the most annoying questions I get about being half Black is, can I say the N-word? Shut the fuck